Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whenever you happenstance into this special breakout section of the session of the new Untouchables featuring Marc Dann, the former state AG of Ohio, in private practice, as you can see behind him at Dan Law. We're recording this on, is it Monday or Tuesday? Is it Monday, right?
Tuesday. Tuesday. It's
Oh, yeah,
Tuesday.
I'm thrown off because of President's Weekend and everything that's
Yeah.
taking place. But yeah, it is Tuesday, February 17th, 2026, approximately 9 p.m., 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And, I have just recorded with your colleagues, and I wanted to connect with you as well because I know you were on a flight, and I'm just so grateful for you to take the time and be flexible. Obviously, I apologize we didn't record on Friday, but as we get rolling into this, I want to just share my screen real quick, Marc, and I want to tee up what I covered with your colleagues, just to kind of give you the same sort of opportunity to respond to everything that we're dealing with. And first and foremost, today it's a sad day. Obviously, the passing of Jesse Jackson, and of course, he was a mountain of a figure in the civil rights movement. And I just wanted to address that right off the top. But I'm going to share a couple of videos just to set the table of just this absolute pandemonium of the things that have been shaping up since the last time we talked. And I'll start off with, just a brief introduction of the stuff that we all saw that took place, obviously, in Congress during the Transparency Act hearings, featuring, of course, none other than our AG Pam Bondi, and of course, somebody who was an AG. Well, you were AG, so I'm going to play this first.
Yeah.
Criminality revealed in the Epstein files. So I really have just one question for you. How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even investigating?
First, you showed it. I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No, you're going to answer the question the way I asked it.
Chairman
how many
Jordan,
have you indicted?
I'm going to get in the gutter with these people.
How many have you?
I'm going to answer the question.
How many have you indicted?
Again, the time belongs.
You're claiming my time.
The time belongs.
I think it's very
claiming
interesting.
my time.
I think it's very interesting.
And you can reclaim
He
your time.
talked about they indicted.
Mr.
The
Chairman.
president said they indicted him.
Mr. Chairman, please stop the clock and restore his time.
And he will get the
Reclaiming
time
my
belongs
time
to the
and
gentleman
back
from
the
New
clock,
York.
please.
We will give you a few more seconds. We will do that. But when
Reclaiming
you
my-
ask a question, the
The
witness
question
gets to
was-
answer. You may not like the answer, but she
Right.
gets to
The
answer.
question was, how many of Epstein's...
They don't like the answer,
Reclaiming
Chairman,
my time.
because it's honest.
Reclaiming
So he asked a
Reclaiming my-
4-minute question.
Restore 45 seconds, Mr. Nadler, please, Mr. Chairman.
my
Answer.
You can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch.
Reclaiming-
Not on our time. No way.
Reclaiming-
And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you started.
Tell me.
Yeah, I did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
Lawyer, not even a lawyer.
Committee will be in order.
Maybe I should get back at least 45
We
seconds.
will give you a few more seconds. I said that already.
45 seconds.
Okay, I'm timing right now, Mr. Nadler. Go ahead.
Reclaiming my time. The answer to my question, how many of Epstein's co-conspirators has she indicted, is 0. You have been the Attorney General for a whole year, and your DOJ fired the lead prosecutor of this case, sat on evidence this entire time, and claimed falsely last July that there were no more leads. It took an act of Congress for you to finally release part of the Epstein files, and when you did, you included personal information about the victims while protecting the names of abusers.
Time of the gentleman
None of the
has
perpetrators
expired.
were brought to justice, but enormous resources.
Time of the
dedicated to
gentleman has
Epstein Johnson.
expired, and
It's
obviously
clear that under your leadership, the Department of Justice
there was
no longer
no
works
question
for
in there.
It works
Or
for
respond
Donald
to.
Trump. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.
May I answer?
I think our next questioner, Madam Attorney General, is going to give you time to respond to
Thank you, Chairman.
all kinds of things. So we will turn to the gentleman from Texas for 5 minutes.
Ms. Bondi, you go right ahead. I'm over here. The time is yours.
Thank you. First, he brought up the president saying they indicted me twice. They sure did. They tried to impeach him twice. And you, Mr. Nadler, were one of the leads on the impeachment. I was on the other side. I lived that with you. During impeachment, you said the president conspired, sought foreign interference in the 2016 election. Robert Mueller found no evidence, none, of foreign interference in 2016? Have you apologized to President Trump? Have you apologized to President Trump, all of you who participated in those impeachment hearings against Donald Trump? You all should be apologizing. You sit here and you attack the president, and I am not going to have it. I'm not going to put up with it. You know, all they want to do, the American people need to know this. They are talking about Epstein today. This has been around since the Obama administration. This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, over 3 million. And Donald Trump signed that law to release all of those documents. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them ask Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing.
All right, I'm going to move on to this next two clips too, just to set the table. And obviously, I couldn't help but think that you're obviously very well aware of Mr. Jordan, considering his stellar career at Ohio State Wrestling. But I want to set this up first, and I'm going to do two more things here, and then we'll get the conversation started. But the fallout from that hearing was mostly about all things Epstein. But I do want to point out also that Raskin had it about more than the Epstein files, and here's an example.
Including catered meals, private gym time, and access to a therapy puppy. All because Todd Blanche, who's utterly failed to investigate the monstrous crimes of Epstein and Maxwell's co-conspirators, spent 9 hours with Maxwell and satisfied himself that she would have nothing untoward to say about Donald Trump, which is your only real interest in the matter, based on institutional performance. But abandoning victims and coddling perpetrators is what you do best. When the FBI opened a criminal investigation into the brutal killing in Minneapolis of Renee Good, a poet and 37-year-old mother of 3, by Trump's masked paramilitary ICE agents, you shut it down. You claim you're investigating the cold-blooded murder of Alex Preddy, an ICU nurse at the VA. But how can we trust the administration when the president and Kristi Noem call Preddy a domestic terrorist and Stephen Miller called him a would-be assassin? Not only do you refuse to share evidence with the state and local investigators and prosecutors in Minnesota, you have blocked their access to the crime scene and the evidence. How are you seeking justice for Marimar Martinez, the Montessori school teacher in Chicago who was shot 5 times by a Border Patrol agent who bragged about it on text? Or the family of Keith Porter, a father of 2 shot and killed by an off-duty ICE agent?
I could go on there, but it was really, in addition to all things failure Epstein files, but it was failure of the Department of Justice writ large. But to that point, I want to play you 2 more things and we'll get rolling here. Okay. I laid out to the group before, and I can't wait to get your feedback, considering I know what you and your team had done along these lines. But let's take a quick look at this. This was from Bloomberg, by the way.
Jeffrey Epstein called this woman, who later became the top lawyer at Goldman Sachs, the night he was arrested in 2019. Before that, he had showered her with gifts, and she even described him as an older brother. That's why I'm surprised her departure from Goldman took this long. Right up until Catherine Remler sent in her resignation, the firm was still defending its top attorney. Goldman maintained that her interactions with Epstein were typical of a business relationship and that the convicted sex offender gave unsolicited gifts to many of his contacts. Remler says that she had only a professional relationship with Epstein, had no knowledge of his criminal conduct, and regretted ever knowing him. But the connection between them has been publicly known since at least 2023, when the Wall Street Journal outed her as someone who appeared on Epstein's private calendar. The two also exchanged more than 11,000 emails between 2014 and 2019, when she was serving as a criminal defense attorney. Yet as each new batch of Epstein files revealed more about the scope and nature of the relationship, Goldman's defense of Remler grew more confusing. Just last month, a spokesperson called their interactions inconsequential friendly exchanges. But Bloomberg News had noted how the warm tone of Epstein's emails with her stood out. After the latest batch of files were released, There were signs that Goldman was distancing itself from its top lawyer. Even then, however, the decision to leave was reportedly still Rumler's. By characterizing their relationship as strictly professional, Goldman sent the wrong message about what companies should consider appropriate behavior.
And one last piece here, and then we'll move into it.
In fact, the top lawyer, Kathy Brumler, is resigning after thousands of newly released emails and documents show that she had a much closer relationship with convicted sex offender and disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein than she had previously ever let on. Brumler has had a pretty big resume. She was a federal prosecutor who helped convict Enron executives. She was President Obama's White House counsel and was briefly even considered to be attorney general. She joined Goldman Sachs in 2020 and became the bank's general counsel, their top lawyer, a year later. But for years, Rumler has downplayed her ties to Epstein. She calls him a monster and says that she regretted ever knowing him and has called it a strictly professional lawyer-client relationship. But 8,400 documents released tell a different story. The emails show personal exchanges, dinner plans, jokes, conversations about their dating lives. She calls him Uncle Jeffrey in one email, and in another she wrote, "I adore him. It's like having an older brother." Epstein also showered her with expensive gifts, Hermes handbags, a Fendi fur coat, spa treatments. And this was years after Epstein was convicted on sex crimes charges in 2008. As Epstein became aware that he might be indicted on new charges in 2019, some of the documents show that Rumler helped Epstein craft strategies on how he could defend his public image. The emails became too much for Rumler, and she resigned. Goldman Sachs' CEO, David Solomons, said he accepted her resignation and praised her work, and she will stay on with the firm until the middle of this year.
All right, well, that's a bit of a long runway into this dialogue, but obviously plenty to chew on. What's your initial reaction to some of this stuff?
Pam Bondi's conduct was not becoming not just of an attorney general or even a former state attorney general, but of a lawyer in that hearing. And I'm aware of multiple people reached out to me to talk about the bar complaints that they're drafting relative to Bondi's conduct at that hearing. In Florida, there's actually a requirement that lawyers operate in a manner becoming of a lawyer and be respectful of other lawyers. And she was anything but that during that hearing, and I think that that setting aside all the other pieces of this, that's one thing to look at. The lawyer from Goldman, clearly is ought to be the poster child for the Epstein class. As John Ossoff, I think, so accurately put it in his recent speeches, the problem isn't the problem is pedophiles, and I can talk to you a little bit about Jim Jordan and pedophiles because we went through an experience when we both served on the Judiciary Committee in the Ohio Senate. Involving that, so many places to go here, but let's take them in order. On Bondi, I think that she needs to, a lawyer is required to act in a more respectful manner than that, and I think the disciplinary folks ought to be looking at her behavior and the way that she treated other people and how disrespectful she was. To Congress as not just as Attorney General, but in her role as a lawyer. On the Goldman Sachs lawyer, the whole issue is this: there's a whole world of people that operate as if there's no risk that they're ever going to face any of the same consequences for their behavior as the rest of us, and those are the people that were coddled during the 2008 financial crisis. It's the very same Epstein class of people, and it's not about empowering pedophilia, although certainly that's part of it, and that's obviously shown the absolute absurdity of our two-tiered system of justice, our two-tiered system of access of power, the right, having money doesn't entitle you to the right to live with impunity. Everybody needs to be held accountable. And so That hasn't happened. And what's amazing is not that that she resigned as general counsel of Goldman Sachs, but that knowing what they knew about her, that she became the general counsel to begin with, and secondly, that the shameless way that these people who operate at this level where they think that they're frankly better than all the rest of us um, were spending their days and months protecting each other and enriching each other. The financial crimes of Epstein, the financial is just as stunning as his abuse of young women, and it needs to be studied. But unfortunately, for the victims of this whole Epstein scenario, we found the level, and with when Jim Jordan and I were in the Senate, there was Senate Bill 17, which was to create an immunity. I'm sorry, it was to make priests reporters of mandated reporters. So certain individuals in Ohio, when they are aware of child abuse, have a legal duty to report. It's criminal if they don't report. And at the time, in 2003 and four, um, uh, priests were not included among the mandated reporters, which could have maybe saved a lot of people's grief and trauma at the hands of folks in the Catholic Church if priests were mandated reporters, but they weren't. I mean, it would have been an easy way to address the issue that was so serious. We brought the victims of those crimes in front of the Judiciary Committee. And my amendment, and look, as Democrats even then were in a very small minority in the Senate. We were 12 out of 33 members of the Senate. I was the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee. It wasn't very often that my amendments were adopted by the committee, and the plan was never to adopt the amendment so they wanted to update the mandated reporter bill, and I introduced an amendment to include priests and other clergy members with it. And in support of that amendment came folks organized by an outfit called SNAP. It was a network of people who had been abused by Catholic priests. And the testimony they gave was mind-bendingly sad and traumatic, and people were willing to share the story of the trauma that they went through, and not just the fact that they went through the trauma, the fact that they went to the people. It was conducted by people they trusted. And then the people in the world they lived in, the Catholic schools, their parents, simply the bishops simply suppressed. So when they went to complain, nobody would hear their pleas. And it sounds strikingly familiar when you think of the story of the young women who were recruited by Epstein, surrounded by all these powerful people, prosecutors and judges, and business leaders and actors and producers and all these people that had tremendous access to power, who did nothing to protect them when they were given when this behavior was right in front of them, and in fact spent their time trying to help the perpetrator of these crimes protect himself, cover his own ass, get him out of trouble, pay off those favors that he had accumulated over all those years. Uh, but in that committee hearing, it's really the only time this ever happened in my experience in the General Assembly, and I've been around I was actually testifying in the General Assembly today, but all my years of 37 years around the State House, I watched the minds of the members of the committee change as they heard the testimony of these victims. And that's what's missing here, because you could be the most hardened soul, and you could be the most loyal Republican foot soldier, or or most loyal person to the leadership of the General Assembly that didn't want to create risk for the Catholic diocese around the state. We're a very Catholic state in Ohio. Didn't want to create exposure for the insurance companies that insured the Catholic diocese, who were behind the effort to oppose the amendment that I offered. But as the afternoon went on, you could watch the minds of the committee members change before your eyes. I was crying. The other members were crying. Jim Jordan was crying. And because we really, to his credit, he allowed all those people to have their day and to have their say. Now, at the time, I had no idea that he was that he was involved with the abuse allegations at Ohio State, that came later. So maybe he was crying about something other than the pain that those victims had suffered. But the other members of the committee, their hearts melted. I mean, it was like the Wizard of Oz when the Wicked Witch melts, when faced with true goodness in front of them, and true pain that people had suffered. And we amended that statute, voted it out of the committee, and the entire Senate, with tears in their eyes, voted to amend the mandated reporter statute to include priests. Now, the Catholic diocese and the insurance industry pulled themselves together, and they were able to defeat that bill in the House, sadly, in backroom deals that they tried to keep out of the public eye, to the point where SNAP had some success at a lawsuit to actually invalidate some of the actions of the House, because they were trying to keep all their machinations from the public, but never managed to get that amended. And then we also we had another amendment to extend the statute of limitations, so that that victims could bring civil lawsuits based on that. New York did something similar. But Ohio never was able to do it because of the opposition of the church and the insurance industry. But for a moment in time, it changed. Now here we have a national spotlight. Those victims were all there, lined up behind Pam Bondi. And I happened to be I was in Los Angeles for a mediation, and I happened to be working in my hotel room as this was on the TV, and I watched it in real time. And she had an opportunity to demonstrate humanity there. The most striking thing that she didn't do was when she was asked to turn around and apologize to those victims for the fact that the Justice Department didn't do their job. She didn't seize that opportunity. There would have been zero downside for her to do it. But her audience of one at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue wouldn't have any of it. As it's just a tragic display, in a disappointment, both from a professional standpoint and from a personal standpoint. So many missed opportunities here for people to do what's right for these folks that happen. But if there's a lesson here, it's that the two-tiered system of justice is real, and that what people perceived, and honestly, what I think people are starting to figure out, which is the guy they sent to Washington to break it because they were so disappointed by what happened in the 2008 financial crisis when nobody was brought to justice, among other reasons, that the guy that they set to break it turns out that Donald Trump is perhaps the best protector of the Epstein class in the history of power protecting power in the United States. So, and I think that magic is coming off. That bloom is coming off the rose. I don't think people will ever believe that again. That Trump is the antidote to this control of the judiciary, of the media, by the Epstein class. I think it's now clear for the first time in since Donald Trump rode down the gold elevator, that he is as much or more he's more a part of the problem than he is, and he has there's no chance that he's going to be part of the solution.
Well, it seems awfully obvious and transparent. As you were going through that, I was reminded of a terrific film that got an Academy Award. I can't remember how long ago it was, but it was quite a while ago. It's called Spotlight.
Yeah.
It was about all of what you just described in Ohio, obviously taking place in Massachusetts. And to your point, what turned out to be the situation was because the Catholic religion had such predominance in the state of Massachusetts that the Boston Globe, which is one of the greatest papers of record in the United States, chose to pull the stories of the whistleblowers and the victims for fear how it would ultimately, I guess, send shockwaves to the entire system of power that has probably been hundreds of years in the making, if you think about Massachusetts, right? And further to that, I want to mention another spectacular work that involved the state of Maryland from some filmmakers that I actually know and met on several occasions. They made a Netflix series called The Keepers, which was a very similar situation of whistleblowers and children that were predated upon in the Catholic Church. And in all of these particular scenarios, and to your point, you started talking about backroom deals and negotiations. And there's always this confluence in the United States between the sort of structure, the paradigmatic structure of the institutions, of the power, the traditional power, the money power, the influence, this, that, and the other. And as that all spilled out in this, Epstein Transparency Act in Congress, we saw the behavior that you just, I think, verbalized so clearly of your colleague, Pam Bondi, because again, you both were attorneys general.
Yeah, we served at the same time. Yeah,
at the same time. And but further to that, deplorable revelation of her client, when she's in charge of over 100,000 employees at the Department of Justice, which you and I both know that you give incredible respect towards in what it means in context of what you were doing. But further to that point, I want to try to bring these thoughts together. So Pam Bondi is lying, denying, switching the blame, and implicating, ignoring the victims right behind her. But what does she say? She says, how audacious is it of you, the Democrats, to try to pin this on us when we're being transparent? When this actually, where were your questions for Merrick Garland? This goes back to Obama. Now, and the reason I brought that Attorney General, it probably won't surprise you, Attorney General, General Counsel, pardon me, just another of one of the largest investment banks and most important investment banks, which, many people call government sacks, right? Yeah. She becomes general counsel. Think about this from your perspective. She becomes general counsel through this time period that a lot of stuff that Goldman's involved with, right? Yeah. But she is literally caught, let's say, red-handed with this, taking gifts, having this relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, which we see as the Epstein class. Yeah. And she's in this incredibly powerful position. We talk frequently about, tall building law firms, and you always said so effectively the bespoken suit, right? And these guys that are $1,000 an hour, and I'm sure she's much higher than that as general counsel.
By the way, I ran across a lawyer $4,500 an hour now.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And especially if their clients are private equity and so on and so forth. I can imagine. But to try to complete this thought and to bring this full circle to let you, wind you up and run with it, right? Yeah. As we do quite a bit when we have these interactions. The way that this thing, and it barely came on my radar because of all of the other huge information that's coming down the pike, right? And again, Ro Khanna effectively called this the Epstein class. And you identified, well, it wasn't just, of course, as nauseating as it is, the predation of children, but it was also tied to this financial apparatus. As you go through the process, you discover Oh, by the way, it spills out into Bear Stearns, into JP Morgan Chase, and as it turns out, Goldman Sachs, right?
Right.
It's a small world when you get to that level. So here you are, a guy, and I'm just going to say this last thing to tee you up. I know from our work in the con that your crack team ends up doing the discovery to bring the only RICO conviction in the entire country, of which is this global pandemic, and they follow the leads directly to Goldman Sachs, and Goldman Sachs tells your guys, you don't know what you're talking about. And of course, everybody on your team, especially your forensic accountant, knew exactly what he was talking about. My God, Mark, you've been in the centerpiece, the centrifuge of this thing now literally over 20 years. Wherever you go, I'm listening.
Well, no, I mean, it's there's an entire economy of that once you're in, you're in, of Harvard and Yale educated lawyers and in tall building firm lawyers who move back and forth in and out of government, that have built this great protection racket. I mean, it's worthy of I spent 20 years in Youngstown, Ohio, which is famous for, used to be called Murder City, USA. It was, and I met some of the old mobsters along the way. They were a little more harmless by the time I got to Youngstown in 1998 or 1990. But the fact is that this is just an old-fashioned protection racket. These people are, because the currency, and I think what Epstein showed, the Epstein files show more clearly than, and I think in a very dramatic, direct way, it lifts a picture. The currency is favors, not money. This now, Donald Trump's a whole different class of criminal. Okay, those guys, they're operating in cryptocurrency and money. You got to pay if you want protection from Donald Trump. You got to pay. That's a whole different game. The Obama era protection racket was all an exchange of favors, and Jeffrey Epstein and guys like Jeffrey Epstein they basically made their lives and livings as fixers. He was fixer for Les Wexner. He was who was a billionaire from here in Ohio, who what the blogger calls the underwear purveyor. But I mean, he was and he traded in this currency of favors, which is exactly how in Youngstown, when all the mob stuff unraveled, when I was there, active in politics and in I used to, the only time I ever worked for a bank is that old Bank One, which is now part of Chase, used to hire our firm to go in and make sure cases weren't fixed against them in Youngstown. So they would hire us to just literally sit in the room with their tall building lawyers, because they knew they wouldn't fix cases in front of us. But we saw 120 lawyers and judges go to jail. But it wasn't bags of cash as like people imagine, or frankly, bags of cryptocurrency, which is what we're seeing with Trump. It was a much more subtle infrastructure that was built, where these folks protected each other. And I think if nothing else, the Epstein files shows very clearly that at work. I mean, Epstein managed to protect himself. He managed to commit rape with impunity until he never was held accountable until he killed himself. And those folks never had their day in court or their day of justice. But it wasn't just that. It was part of a whole fabric of that relationship. That's what protected the bankers during the financial crisis. It's what protected. I mean, another story that there's so many pieces, but there was a whistleblower from the I think it was the Treasury Department person in charge of monitoring the money laundering at banks, that talked about how Credit Suisse took a dive. Oh no, I'm sorry, it was Credit Suisse's own compliance officer talked about how they covered up Jared Kushner's bad behavior and the fact that he was He was making payments directly to Russian nationals. But this whole network of people that were just protecting each other, and Epstein somehow got in the middle of that, and that came up in these files. This is, it's worse than we thought, I think, is what people who look at this with any seriousness have to conclude, that you really could operate and commit crimes and engage in espionage and enrich yourself with enemy nations who one day are giving you your company contracts or investments, and the next day they're murdering their political enemies with toad serum. Right. And you had a pretty good feeling that you would not be held accountable. All Trump did was take that process out in the open and create an open bribery auction for protection. So to his credit, at least it's transparent now. But as much as Pam Bondi should have turned around and apologized to the victims, I think the Democrats on that committee ought to have turned around to the American people and said, you know what, we let this happen too. And you know what, you're damn right. We should have asked Merrick Garland about this stuff, and because they didn't do their job either. So what's wrong with just telling the goddamn truth once in a while? I mean, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it to have to have the first line of your obituary, I protected Donald Trump, or have the first line of your obituary that I got reelected 23 times and didn't do a fucking thing in Congress, but I raised $1 million a year. Is that the legacy that people want to have? Why have these jobs? I mean, there's only 535 people that get to be in Congress. In my lifetime, there's only going to be a couple thousand people that will have that honor and that opportunity. It's one that I wish I had the opportunity to do. I love being a legislator in the state, and I would, what an honor. But don't waste it. Go do your job. Bring truth to power and hold people accountable and admit when you're wrong. I'll give you an example of something I did today, and because it also plays into another coming constitutional crisis in this country, which is the election, the Trump obsession with taking over state elections. So in addition to a bill I testified today on ranked choice voting, it's a bill to ban, I'm actually opposing a bill to ban ranked choice voting, which is never solving a problem that doesn't exist. But I chaired the charter commission in my hometown here in Lakewood, Ohio, and we've recommended that for city elections that they put in place ranked choice voting here in Ohio, or here as an experiment to show the rest of the state that you could make elections more civil, that you can make elections fairer, that you can make sure that people of color have a better chance of getting elected in elections. There's a whole variety of reasons, and I live in a very progressive little city, and so this is the place where we could gather the support of our community to try something like this out, which prompted the General Assembly to try to ban it, and the way they're doing it is saying that if you can do it. But if you do it, we're going to take away all your local government funds. We're going to take away all the money the state sends to your city. So they're effectively banning it in the state. So I was talking about 2006 when I got elected Attorney General. I had strong supporters who thought that the 2004 presidential election, Bush versus Gore, was fixed in Ohio, that there was misfeasance and malfeasance and even criminality. I mean, the Democrats in 2005 sounded a lot like Trump in 2016, talking about how election fraud robbed us of an election victory, and so when I became AG, and to also the credit of Jennifer Brunner, who was the Secretary of State, two new Democrats elected. we put a group together. The AG, between the powers of the AG's office and the power of the Secretary of State's office, we had the ability to investigate election fraud, and we dove in. We assigned experienced investigators to it, and at the end of the day, you know what we found? That the system we have to protect elections, which is very localized, every county has a board of elections. Every board of elections has two Democrats and two Republicans, and they watch each other like hawks all day. That's all they do. Their only job in life is to watch each other. And if the chair of the board of elections is a Democrat, then the director of the board of elections is a Republican, and vice versa. And that's all over the state of Ohio. 88 different. So there's 4 people in 88 counties. So if you wanted to fix an election, you'd have to co-opt, 200 people plus all the people that work there. And there's huge transparency around all of it. And I said I had to disappoint the people that supported me, and because they were absolutely convinced that this happened, and it didn't. And I said, and it's no different now. And my question to you, ladies and gentlemen, in this committee, do you have the guts to tell your supporters that it's not okay, that the state has a good, solid way of making sure elections are without fraud, and nothing, and federalizing it would be the worst thing that could happen, or changing in any way the way that votes are counted in the state of Ohio. But I did that. I made Democrats mad. That's part of the job. When did we lose that? When did we lose that? Why didn't Jerry Nadler say, you know what? Merrick Garland fucked up too. But that doesn't excuse you. Okay? What are you going to do about it? And we're letting him get away with it. And it almost helps him win the argument, which is absurd. I mean, it's as absurd as saying that the current economy is the fault of Joe Biden. I mean, there's no economist in the world that believes that. There's nobody in the world that believes that we did any better, that Merrick Garland and the Democratic DOJ or his predecessors in the DOJ did any better job of going after the Epstein class, whether it was for financial fraud, whether it was for pedophilia, whatever they were doing, than they did. They didn't do a good job. And that's really tragic. Were they good at going after poor people? Were they good at going after drug dealers and people who trafficked poor people who trafficked other poor people? They were great at that. But when the rich people started doing the trafficking, when the rich people were doing the drug dealing, when the connected people, when the Epstein class did it, they were nowhere to be found. Democrat, Republican, and so Pam Bondi really is just no better. When it comes to this particular stuff, we were no better than they were. So acknowledge it. Now, Congress, you have an opportunity to do something about it. Look, and I think, Ro Khanna and what's his name from no, who's the Republican?
Massey.
What's it?
Massey.
Yeah, Massey. They're circling around it. But goddamn, grab on. It's bigger than just release the files. It's not just about transparency. It should be about reform. It should be about accountability. And that accountability needs to transcend administrations. So, when she's right, she's right. The problem is the way she handled herself, the way her refusal to answer questions of Congress. It's not just not becoming of a United States Attorney General. It's not becoming of an ex-state Attorney General. It's not becoming of a lawyer, and she needs to be held accountable for that. And I know at least one very capable friend of mine is going to file a disciplinary complaint with the Florida bar because it needs to be done, not because he's my friend, but because it's like witnessing a crime being committed on national television. Now the question is, what are you going to do, Florida bar, about it? You have an attorney general that flaunts the rule of law. that flaunts accountability, that refuses to answer reasonable, direct questions from Congress, so is technically acting in contempt of Congress, what are you going to do about it? Should she still be a member of your bar? I mean, remember the Arkansas bar, they took Bill Clinton's license away.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did after he made misrepresentations in a deposition.
Was that
right?
Whitewater?
Rightly so. It's part of the Monica Lewinsky investigation.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, no, he lost his law license. He's never gotten it back.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. You know, there's so many things that I wanted to react to from
not that he hasn't done okay without the law license. I mean, but it meant something. It means something. It means something. It means something to me. When I went through my travails and lost my license for 6 months, it killed me. It was the worst thing I've ever been through in my life, and I have worked so hard to make myself and prove that I'm worthy of our profession and the professionalism and the standards that we have for each other. And I'm very proud of that success I've had over the last 15 years in doing that. But you know, it was awful. It was truly awful, and I'm embarrassed by it, and I'm disappointed in myself. I always will be. But you know, I couldn't have learned unless I was held accountable. And it was good enough for me. I think it's good enough for Pam Bondi. I think it's good enough for so many of the lawyers that were enabling this pedophile, this human trafficker. That now it's very clear, and to Kana and Massey's credit, and the other members of Congress, exactly 1/2 + 1 of members of Congress that supported them in that effort. God bless them for it. I mean, the transparency is the first step, and that's we talk so much about on the new Untouchables about the whistleblowers and how important they are. Transparency is important. Sunshine is the best disinfectant. But now it's time to act. How are they going to act? How are the bar associations going to act? How is Congress going to act? What are they going to do to keep this from happening in the future? What are they going to do to give the next president an incentive to appoint an attorney general that's going to go in and do their job and call the balls and strikes and not be a lapdog for the president?
Well, I think that's going to have to come from the people being inspired by the likes of you. And I want to kind of take a moment to paint this picture further from the standpoint that, as an outsider to Ohio, I always thought that Ohio was kind of like one of these Midwestern states akin to Iowa, my perception of Iowa, my perception of Minnesota, my perception of Wisconsin. They always felt to me, until I really understood all of the elements of the politics that shaped my mind over the last 20 years. But, people of substance, people of character, people of the earth, people of industry, people of great character, right? And I believe when I visited Cleveland all those times, especially, I got that sensibility, that Cleveland strong sort of scenario that you'd see in Pittsburgh and you'd see in other, great industrial cities of the Midwest, for example. But growing up in Texas, I've always been aware of kind of, both sides of the fence, right? There's good guys, there's bad guys. There's good guys that can become bad guys and then be reformed, all sorts, manner, shape, or this or that. But in Ohio, I was absolutely stunned to fully understand, like you talked about with Youngstown. I think about Trafficant, I think about the mob, I think about Cleveland, I think about sometimes I learned about Don King being like, one of these breakers of unions, right? Before he became the promoter. I mean,
Right.
this was tough, rough and tumble, steel town-esque, heartland where, man, it was tough to survive. And sometimes the bad guys had a leg up, and it would always be that constant battle between you guys, both good and bad. And yet when I discovered you, I discovered a man that did what nobody else in the country's done. And I love to reiterate it every single time. You delivered a racketeering indictment and convictions of something that represented the largest racketeering enterprise in the history of the world. that your colleagues today identified several things that you did, but they also identified the power of why we came together through the con, first and foremost, because it was like 2008 never got remedied. It got worse and worse and worse. Yet here you were, a guy who did exactly what the Department of Justice and the government should have done, and you were the only one who actually accomplished it. Now, you've had a career in politics, you've been in private practice, you represent consumers, you've seen corruption at the highest levels. My God, you are in the process, your law firm, of suing the most powerful family in Cleveland for literally stealing funds in the dead of night with the complicity of legislatures to steal from the most vulnerable to basically give it to the richest people in the state, for example, right? You're on the right side of justice for the people in the way the idea of the integrity of our institutions have always been, but yet they have been railroaded by a corruption that has always just been behind the scenes, right? How do you address this moving forward and aspire Americans? And I'll give you one last thing to consider here. Your colleagues on the New Untouchables today identified specifically, again, like you just did, two things. One, the Bar Association has to hold the liars in the Department of Justice accountable and take their license, just like you said. And then two, the whistleblowers. Can you just naturally make the case for me?
Yeah.
That how
we need to really empower whistleblowers. And the third thing we need to do, because it underlies all this, whether you're in Ohio or in Washington or nationally, is we have got to get a rein on campaign finance reform. We have got to create a world. So, I tried in my little way today to promote ranked choice voting in Ohio. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I think it would make it more likely that people who are going to do the right thing and call the balls and strikes and not be beholden to our version of the Epstein class here in Ohio, or to have Congress members that aren't beholden to that class of favor traders that protect themselves. We're going to have a constitutional amendment to change the way campaigns are financed in this country, because a person of good conscience might get elected for one term, but they're not going to get elected for two. They're somebody who goes in and does their job. They're going to be exposed and vulnerable. And if they won't play along with the lobbyists and the favor traders, and that's what Epstein was. I mean, he had no education, or no higher education. He had only one skill, and that was in trade. That was in banking. He ran the bank of favors. And there are Epsteins everywhere, and they need to be shut down. And the only way they're going to be shut down is if the people that are empowered to enforce the laws, the people that are elected to make the laws, aren't in a position where they're beholden to anybody but the people of the country themselves. So I think you add, so you clear the field and make whistleblowers, protect them, promote them, reinvigorate the key TAM laws in the state and the country, so that people have incentives, financial incentives, if necessary, to expose that kind of fraud and corruption. And then you've got to change the way campaign finance is done, and it's going to take a constitutional amendment or a change in the U.S. Supreme Court to do that.
Wow. And, finally, there was another thought that was in my head. I hope I can retrieve it right now, because we're running out of time here. We got maybe about 5 more minutes, but I guess really we've covered some really great ground here. But I guess I'll close with, and it got me emotional earlier today. This is what I was reaching for, actually. So, the guy who you interact with in a wonderful way, you guys rib each other. You both have great senses of humor. But of course, Paul Peltier, right? Paul Peltier, former investigator at the highest level of prosecutions of the Department of Justice and so forth. Would it surprise you first? This is a compounded question. that he was actually the supervisor for Catherine, however you pronounce her name, who was it ended up becoming the general counsel of Goldman. It's kind of a small world here, isn't it?
Yeah.
First and foremost, that's interesting. And he talked about how disappointed he was, but he reiterated really everything that you've talked about. But again, from the position of like giving merit to our collective effort in the new Untouchables, having brought your collective expertise, and I pointed out, some of these tall building law firms, like you said earlier, that are $4,500 an hour, right? Getting paid to lie, deny, switch the blame and implicate, obfuscate, do all of these absolute horrendous scenarios because they're so smart and compatible and they know exactly how to play it, especially if they got a judge that's, on their team, so to speak, because of all things, whatever Trump, maybe, was able to get through the process with that, all of the billionaires that are obviously involved with that. But, you guys collectively, in my opinion, are the only source that I have seen that have been able to speak clearly about bringing the law against this out of control administration every chance we get. You've had plans to go directly to state legislatures with whistleblowers. You've had plans to basically go to the bar. You've had incredibly strategic thoughts to basically turn the tables on this Gotham from hell, right? That's what it is. And that's what the new Untouchables were back when they took out Al Capone, okay? You guys know what to do. You've already said what we have to do, but here's the other thing. You have a team that collectively, you guys know how to do that. What is your message to everybody watching this? That if we're going to save our democracy and we're not going to lose it to authoritarianism for the rest of our existence, given what we both know is the end game of fascism, I mean, it's all on the line, is it not, Mark?
Well, it's everybody's job. I mean, I think that between now and certainly November of this year, it's everybody's job. I was talking to a congressional candidate today who was talking about how frustrating it is because his friends will spend their time on Facebook complaining about what's going on. They are passionate, but when it comes time to go out in a snowstorm in Cleveland and go to a rally or to write a check or to go to write a check to the folks that you think will put an end to this. Go out and knock on doors. Get the message out. Activate your own personal network. Don't just rant and rave and complain, but start to take very strategic action. If you're in government, speak up. If you're out of government, support people for offices in the fall that are going to support it. Working towards 2026, when the government can be hopefully restored to some degree of competence and order, and frankly the Epstein class. By the way, the Lever calls it the master class.
Yeah.
But it's basically the same. It's basically the same group of people. They're enacting all these policies that they've been working on. This is a 40-year effort.
Yeah, Pal memo.
Of all these folks together. So start to build the groundswell to reform campaign finance, to have campaigns financed publicly, but certainly at a minimum to stop this outside dark money spending that's going on, that's making it impossible, and hold those people accountable. If you're a lawyer, raise the ethical issues that are appropriate. Represent the people whose constitutional rights are being trampled. If I was with a lawyer from Minneapolis last week, and they've all mobilized and they've gone to work and they're bringing habeas petitions on behalf of folks that ISIS wrongly incarcerated or wrongly detained or whose house they've wrongly robbed. They bring in 1983 lawsuits against them. Mobilize our side of lawfare to protect it. So there's just so much you can do. But if you're an accountant, use those skills. I mean, but everybody's got to be activated. This is not a drill. This is the beginnings of the rise of an authoritarian state that's designed to protect this Epstein class of people, this master class of people, against regular working class and middle class folks. And the most important thing that people can do is not give up hope, because we have a great democracy. We have a very strong constitution, and we have a judiciary that through all this crisis has held, I think, remarkably well. Even with the pressure that's on them from the U.S. Supreme Court. So don't sit on your rights. Take care of your friends. Support people. Contribute your money strategically and smartly. Get out of your house. Go to those No Kings rallies. Knock on doors. Whatever you can do in your profession, do it. And don't lose hope that we still live in the greatest country in the world, and at some point we can restore it to the kind of democratic order that we all deserve to live in.
And Marc, finally, we're probably past the time, but I got to just squeeze this one in because I'm inspired by what you just said. Marc, can you foresee under a scenario, even though you've got incredible responsibility and a whole lot of people that you're looking out for and so forth with your law firm, and if the opportunity called where you had the people wanting to lift you up into the House of Representatives or whatever might make sense, and I'll also say I know that you worked for Senator Brown early in your career, and I know he's rerunning and so on and so forth. Can you envision any potentiality of if you were called in a meaningful way where the people demanded it? Would you answer that call out of curiosity?
You never know, but I'm treasuring the opportunity to support. We've got fundraisers scheduled at our house about every 6 weeks, because I can't wear out my friends and that might contribute. But I have a friend that's running for Congress against Max Miller, who's a true MAGA disappointment to probably to his family as well as the rest of us in the community. So we're going to have a fundraiser here for that. We're supporting the state AGs in their campaigns, where I'm active with the National Association of Attorneys General and supporting those folks with ideas. And hopefully I've pitched doing a presentation to those AGs about how to collaborate with the private bar to leverage their impact in these kinds of situations going forward. I haven't given up hope on Republican colleagues too. I mean, I think there are plenty of Republicans that are starting to see this for what it is. And so I wouldn't give up hope there either. But I love doing what I can do. I mean, I drove to Columbus today to testify about a bill. I don't get paid for this lobbying. I'm happy to do it, and I want to do it, and I want to be active in what's going on in the world. And certainly, I can't say there's never a scenario, but I think I can contribute in lots of ways, and I think everybody can too. And I want to be an example for my kids, and for your kids, and for others that you can make a huge impact, and you don't have to have any of the spotlight or the glory to do it.
Right on. Humility is always the thing, but at the same time, thank you for all that you've done, and you've supported our efforts and being involved with your time. And again, not charging us $1,000 an hour for this.
Yeah, if I could get $4,500 an hour, I might not be here, but so far so good for you. So
right, exactly. But yeah, you never know. Maybe we're going to create a groundswell, and I replace Fox and MS Now and all the rest of them. We become the media empire where we can provide thank you sort of gestures for your time and effort. But anyway, thank you and all the best to you. Ladies and gentlemen, please check out danlaw.com. And again, everybody check out thenewuntouchables.com, and of course, thecleannewdeal.org. Thank you so much, Marc, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Be well.
Thanks, Patrick.